aggressive second wave of COVID is sweeping across India. It has overrun hospitals and crematoriums too. India, the world's pharmacy, is now facing shortages of vaccines and drugs. The devastation has exposed the underfunding and neglect of the public healthcare system. We have a new variant which could be fast spreading strain. A storm has shaken the country. Hello everyone, this is Tina Thakkar from the Economic Times. Today we have with us Gagandeep Kang, Professor of Virology at the Christian Medical College, Vellore, and a member of the government's advisory COVID working group to understand why India is ailing. So ma'am, I'll start with the latest issue, which is the black fungus. Or, what is behind the surge and what should people do to save themselves?
I think one of the things that is important to recognize is that in India, we have a history of overtreatment. So whether that is taking antibiotics for viral infections that don't need antibiotics, or it is taking steroids too early and too long in COVID-19, we have used medicines indiscriminately. And the use of steroids in particular, as well as the fact that we have a lot of diabetics in our country, and potentially, this is not proven by any means, the use of apparatus that is not cleaned appropriately, can all contribute to the occurrence of something that is essentially a fungus that is found in the environment, now beginning to grow in people. Steroids and diabetes are the highest risk factors. And if we look at what's been happening over the last few months, it has been an indiscriminate use of steroids.
It can't be because of the use of industrial oxygen, ma'am, because I have seen some reports which are talking about industrial oxygen being or could be the reason for this problem.
Yes, I think a lot of people thought that initially, but it turns out that industrial oxygen is a higher grade oxygen than medical oxygen. So the chances of contamination from industrial oxygen are very, very low. So it's unlikely to be a cause of this.
Ma'am, we also have vision, and how dangerous is it for the young?
Mucormycosis is dangerous in everybody at every age. So I think this is something where this is a preventable infection. If we manage people appropriately, it is the unfortunate few who get infected with mucor. And here we are creating a situation that predisposes to people having mucormycosis because of the prolonged use of steroids. You can't help the diabetes. All you can do is make sure that you maintain really tight sugar control, and that absolutely should be done. But really, the other way of preventing it is making sure that steroids are used only when indicated and stopped when they are not necessary. And that does not seem to be happening.
Ma'am, we are also hearing about Singapore variant. So how dangerous is it is for the young especially? A lot of has come out on the Singapore variant. So
I'm sorry, but I really don't know what the Singapore variant is. I've been tracking variants quite reasonably, and it seems to me that Singapore did have publications on the variant that's known as B16172, but that's not a Singapore variant, and nor is it found in Singapore more than it is found in other parts of the world, like our backyard.
Have there been any breakthroughs in making medicine for COVID? Like how effective is the new DRDO drug?
My short answer is I don't know. Because as far as I am aware, this is a drug that has been evaluated in very small clinical trials, and I'm not clear what the outcomes of those trials were. Usually when you look at a scientific paper and try to see whether a drug is working or not, you have a very clearly defined outcome, which is, did the person in the Solidarity trial that has been done, the outcomes are, did the person progress to invasive ventilation or did they die, or did they get discharged? Very clear, right? In the recovery study, they've also looked at duration of hospitalization, how well people improve, etc. Those tend to be secondary outcomes, but your primary outcome needs to be very, very clearly defined. Now, with all the studies put together for this new drug seem to be in a couple of hundred people, and that's really not enough to establish whether a drug works or not. So I hope it works because it's something that is easily available in the country. But I think now that it has been approved, what we need to do is to set up a large-scale independent study to evaluate how well it works at different stages of disease. And these studies should have very, very clearly defined outcomes that are objective, so we can measure them with great accuracy. These studies should be done, right now it may be a little difficult because the drug has been licensed, to think about doing it as a randomized controlled trial. But really, I'd like to see an RCT with a, you can include it in a multi-arm trial, for example, where you could potentially use historical controls. So technically, it can be evaluated, even though it's an approved drug.
Even plasma therapy has now been discontinued, like after in use for more than a year, even though the ICMR study had shown a very limited effect on recovery. Why was it prescribed so frequently? I just want to know.
I think everybody wants to do something to help, right? When you have somebody in your family who's sick, you want to make sure that they are getting the best treatment. So even if you think, okay, this has a 2% chance of helping or a 10% chance of helping, you'll run after it because you really want to make sure that you are doing your best to help them out. So with plasma therapy, it makes sense. It's very plausible that if somebody has made antibodies, they will help another person. Well, we know that antibodies do help. We know this from animal studies where you can transfer antibodies between animals and demonstrate protection. We also know it from a small Argentinian study where they were able to get the plasma with very high titer neutralizing antibodies into people within the first 3 days of symptoms. The problem is it only applies in that narrow window. So to have high titer neutralizing antibodies and get it into people within 3 days of them starting to have a fever or a cough, that's not likely to happen. By the time a person reaches hospital, which is where plasma therapy is usually done, it's too late for it to work. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that that is the case and held on to something in the hope that there might be something there. But the recovery trial, which recruited over 10,000 people, has shown that that is absolutely not the case. Once you're in hospital, this is not effective therapy. So I think the government recommending that plasma therapy be removed is a very good move.
Professor Kang, thank you so much for being here and for all the information that you have given. This is Tina Thakkar from the Economic Times. We'll keep updating you on COVID-19. Keep watching this space.